we're talking about CSS today, right? So this is customization of web pages using CSS. And CSS is like, I wouldn't say it's really like a language in terms of like not having like dynamic variables and functions and things like that. There are things like, there's a thing called SAS that is like, not SAS like the stats program, SAS, S-A-S-S, that sort of helps move CSS more towards that, where you can have functions and things sort of. But what it ultimately ends up doing is just rendering, or it's just creating all of the CSS anyway. So today, of course, in one lecture, we're not going to go deep into this at all, but I do kind of want to just make you aware of what's happening here and how you would customize it. Specifically today, we're going to mostly focus on colors and fonts. Okay, how would you change the color of something, and how would you change the font of something? I'll also show you sort of a newer thing in R Markdown, which is you can create your own divs, and then you can style those, so you can create little like call out boxes and things really easily. And that's true for anything that runs through Pandoc, which is most of R Markdown. Okay, it's not all of it. If you're doing something in Hugo through Blogdown, then that might not be the case, but most of the time it will. Okay, so really quick, basics of HTML. I'm guessing most of you don't have a lot of familiarity with this. If you do, great, but this will just be review. But if not, I want to show you quickly how HTML code is sort of rendered, right? So with pretty much any HTML document, you have the body, right? So this is like the body of the document. And then within that, you have all of these other things, right? So this is H1, which means a level 1 header, right? This is P, which means it's a paragraph, right? So this is like text. And so you have all of these tags here that identify different elements of the HTML that you end up actually viewing, right? So when we're writing in R Markdown, or Markdown generally, you do things like this, right? Hashtag, and then my header, and that gets translated into H1, my header, H1. Okay, notice on the second H1, we always have this slash. That slash is to say this is the end. So this code here sort of opens the my header, and then the level 1 header, and then the slash closes it. Okay. There's a whole slew of tags out there for HTML. These are just a couple of them. Another common one I didn't put on here, but is like table. Like if you had an HTML table, right? And there's a whole bunch of others. So the body of the document, breaks, headers. These are for emphasis, so bold, underlined, italicized. Paragraph A is for a link. So anything that is linked is with an A. I actually have no idea where the A comes from. It's just is what it is. It's A is a link. IMG for image, and then div. Div is just sort of a generic, this is a div in this document. And very often you'll have div inside a div, inside a div, inside a div. And that's HTML used to not be that way like years and years ago, but it is now, because that's how you can get really complex and nice looking web pages, because each div can be styled differently. But you also have most HTML these days is not created by writing HTML directly. It's created through other things that end up creating the HTML for you. So if you have div inside a div inside a div inside a div, it's not that big of a deal, because you're writing one thing that's actually going and creating all of that. All right. So that's sort of like super quick, obviously, but what we're doing when we're messing with CSS, right? Or when we're using HTML. And what we do with CSS is we reference those things, and then we tell that how it should be styled, right? So we reference the HTML pieces, and there's a bunch of different, well, there's basically 3 different ways you can reference pieces, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the CSS code is going to tell it how it should show up on your screen. Okay, so let's start with an R Markdown document. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pull up R. Hopefully you're already there, but if not, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to just create a new R Markdown document. Okay. We'll just make it as simple as possible. I'll call this CSS example. You can call it whatever you want. Now, let's go ahead and actually right away just knit this document. Okay, I'm going to save it on my desktop, and I'll call it class RMB. Okay. Now, hang on just a second. Go over here. And here it is, right? So this is obviously not new. This is what we've been doing forever. But what we're going to do now is we're going to start to style this page. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to create a new R code chunk, just like I would normally, right? But instead of having R here, this R is saying the code that follows will be in R, right? That's not actually what I want. I want CSS. Okay, so I just swap out that R for CSS, and then I can write some CSS code. Okay. Now we're going to change the body of this, the font for the body of the document. Okay, and we do that like this. So here I'm saying body, which is referencing that HTML tag, right? And then I use curly braces, and then you don't have to hit return, but that's good styling, right? And then all we're going to do from there is say font dash family, put a colon, and then say in quotes Times New Roman. And then make sure each line ends with a semicolon. Okay? That's it. If I want, what I probably want to do most of the time with CSS is say echo equals false, so that that code chunk doesn't actually show up in my document. And then I'm going to render this again. And now when I come back over here, this is what it looks like before. When I refresh that, notice the font changed. Okay? So generally, what we're going to do is we're going to reference the HTML thing here, and it's not always going to be an HTML tag. That's the easiest case. That's why we're starting there. But you can also reference them by their ID or by their class, and so we'll get to both of those in just a second. And then within that, you're going to say what you want to modify. Okay, so generally, it's going to go thing, whatever the thing is, font family, color, background color, whatever, colon, and then whatever the modifier is. So the arguments to that argument, basically, right? So Times New Roman or green or whatever, okay? And then semicolon. Give me a thumbs up emoji if you were able to get that to work. Wonderful. Okay, now what I would like you to do is just continue to modify this code that I have given you a start on to try to, and you can do different things, right? To try to modify your document. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. So this is the first sort of challenge. See if you can use a different font family. So just some font that you have installed on your computer, maybe Helvetica or something that's one pretty much everybody has, or Menlo or something like that. Try to use a different font for the level 1 headers. Okay, so you might need to go back a few slides to remember how that's called. Change the color of the body text or one of the headers. And the way we're going to do that is just by saying color and then whatever hex code you want to use. And then if you have time, try playing with background color as well, in addition to just color. that make sense? So this is a little challenge for you for 3 minutes, and then I'm going to go through it after that. Okay? Here we go. All right. So give me a thumbs up if you were successful on this first part, being able to use a different font for the level 1 headers. Okay, I'm seeing some. Okay, so the way that we're going to do that is if we go back here, notice that level 1 header is called H1, right? So what we're going to do over here is I'm going to create a new CSS code chunk, call it H1, and then I'll say font-family, and then I need to call it something different. So I'll say Menlo, all right? And then my semicolon at the end. Now, the other thing that's a little bit tricky about this is this document does not, by default, have a level 1 header in it. Actually, I think the title is. But so we can make sure by putting this as a level 1 header also. Okay? Then we're going to knit this, and we'll come back here. So this is what it looked like before. And now it looks like that. Okay? So we changed the font of this. And we changed it to a level 1 header. But yes, the title is a level 1 header also. Okay? The second part of this challenge said to change the color of the body of the text. Okay, so here's the body. And then I said use this color hex code. All right, so I'm going to go color. And then I need to go get a color. So I'm going to go to my favorite one, which is hslpicker.com. And I mentioned before I like this because HSL is much more around, is much more focused around the way that we tend to think about color naturally, because we pick a hue, you pick how much saturation is in it, and then how light it is. Okay, so I'm going to make it fairly dark so that it's visible. Okay, and I'll go with this blue color. All right, so I'm just going to copy actually the whole thing. And then I'll come over here and just paste it in there. Okay, one of the things that's a little bit tricky here that you may not have been able to get is that I don't surround this one by in quotes, right? So I kind of gave you a little bit of a hint here by not surrounding this by quotes, but it's still kind of tricky, right? So let's go ahead and save this, and then I'll knit it again. And now when I refresh this, it looks like that. Okay? So that's kind of cool. Now let's try playing with the background color. So let's say for my, in fact, I'll even do it for H2. Okay, so I'm going to change the background color of my H2. I'll make that font family Menlo also. Oops. And then I'm going to say background color is equal to that same one I have above. Do I have that? Yeah. And then because that's going to be the background color, so the background color of the thing, right? I'm going to actually change the font color too. Actually, before I do that, let's just render it like this and see what it looks like. So I'll do that, and then I refresh, and this is what I was kind of talking about. Okay, this is my level 2 header here now. Wait a minute, is that? Yeah. So this says including plots, but you can't see it at all, obviously, right? So what I'm going to do instead is change the color, which will change the color of the text, and I'm going to change that to FFFFFF, which is white. Okay, and I just know that because I've done it 18 bazillion times. Okay, now we can refresh and we see it looks like that. Okay, so you can see, and obviously I've written a lot of CSS at this point, so this is fairly natural for me. So if this is like, whoa, that went fast, that's okay, right? But what I'm trying to get at is that essentially small little modifications can result in a big change in how the document looks, right? And you can see how this kind of builds up because you make one change and then you're like, oh, but I want to tweak this. And then you go back and make that tweak and whatever. I think we could even try a line center. Let's see if we can do that, if that works. I'm not sure if that will, but let's see. Nope, that didn't work. So this is like very common too. You try to do something, doesn't work, go Google, figure it out, or give up and move on. Okay? All right. Now, let's say, though, instead that I want to use a font that is not on my local computer. I mentioned in our fonts lecture that Google Fonts is a great place to do that. So it's just fonts.google.com. It's linked on the slides. And you can go here and you can just browse these 18 bazillion fonts. All right. Let's say I want the body of my R Markdown file to have this font instead. Okay, this indie flower one. I'm going to click on it. And I can actually type some code here that this is a plot. And I'm like, yeah, that looks cool. That's what I want, right? Then you click select this style right here, right? And then over here, it's going to offer you some code, okay? I'm going to click import instead of link because this is going to be the CSS code. Link is going to give you like HTML code. All right, and this is actually within an HTML thing too, but that's all right. So we see style and style. Those style tags are HTML tags, all right? We're not going to worry about those. We're going to take everything between those style tags, okay, which is just the import tag, okay? Grab that, come back to RStudio, and you can actually do this anywhere, but I tend to import my fonts at the top, okay? So just paste it in there. Okay, so import Google API, CSS2, family, indie flower, display equals swap. Okay, that's going to go out and get that font when this page is rendered. Then down here it says CSS rules to specify families. So again, we're just going to copy this code and we're going to put it right in our CSS here. So the body is going to have this font family instead. Okay? And notice this is saying the font family is indie flower, but then it has this additional argument to it that says it's going to be a cursive display. Okay? And that just comes straight from Google Fonts. So I know that's how I need it to be if I want it to look like this. Okay? Okay, now let's try that. We knit it. Come back here. Oops, not there. Here, we refresh, and there we are. Something totally different, right?
Daniel, could you please explain what is the cursive things again?
Sure. So when I look here, right, see how this has this sort of slant to it and whatever? There's basically, I think there's like 3 or 4 different additional arguments you can pass to a font. So there's like cursive, there's I think plain, and I don't know, a few others. And so that's just an additional argument to the font telling it how it should display. So this is the family of the font, but then this is an additional argument telling it how it should display. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Okay, questions on that? I'll give you a minute or two. See if you can go and grab a font and change either your level 1 headers or your body or whatever. I'll give you maybe 1 or 2 more minutes in case you weren't able to follow along all the way. So this is basically just another example of showing Google Font, right? So this is one I grabbed from as I was creating these slides, and then I changed the H1 font family to that, okay? Occasionally, this can increase the runtime for your page. So when people visit it, it might take a second longer to render because it's got to first go out to Google Fonts, grab that font, and then render the page. Usually it's not significant, but occasionally it can be. Okay, inspecting things. So this is sort of like the next step, right? After we've got the basics on how we're going to create some HTML. We might say, all right, that's neat, but really what I want to do is I want to change how this code is displayed here, right? That's really the thing I want to change. Well, how do I do that? I don't know what the HTML tag is for that thing, okay? So this is where I would recommend you use Google Chrome, because to me, it has the best developer tools. Okay, there are other browsers that have, basically every browser that I've seen has developer tools at this point. But I think, in my opinion anyway, the Google Chrome ones are the easiest to use. Okay, so it allows you to basically inspect a bunch of things that are happening on the web page, and then figure out, what it is you need to modify. So let's see if we can modify the background color for our code chunks. Okay, so if we look at it here, right now it's this gray color. Maybe we want to change that color. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and you probably can't see my tabs very well, but if I go to View, you can probably see that, right? Developer, you go to View, Developer, and then Developer Tools. Okay, once I click that, you will see I get a new window over here. All right, and this, I can hover over things here and it will show me where they are on the page, but that doesn't help me too terribly much. What's nice though is right up here, I have this little, looks like a window with a cursor. I can click that, and then I can hover over things over here. All right, and it's going to tell me where that code is. So once I click on that, then I will get the corresponding div over here. So we can see this thing is called pre, and it has class of R, but we're not going to worry about that so much right now. And then down below, you can see the actual CSS. Okay, and so this is the code, this is the CSS down here for this pre element. And what's nice is in Google Chrome, and you can do this with other browsers too, but you can look through this and you can actually modify it right here and see what the change looks like. Okay, so I have background color here. You can see that, right? And I can actually just click that and it'll bring up this little color thing for me. So I can say, well, instead of that color, maybe I want it to be like that color. Okay, and you can see how it changes right there, right? Which is great. So now all I have to do is grab whatever color I want there, and then back over here in R, in my CSS code chunk, I'm just going to type pre, just like I see over here, right? And then I'm going to say background color, and then paste that color in, and that's it. Okay, now when I knit this file and I refresh this document, now it just is that way, right? And we can again do our inspection, but when we look here, notice it's the background color down here on this pre has been has the strike through, right? And up here we have pre background color, this color. Does that make sense? Now maybe I want to make that color a little bit darker, like maybe like, let's go like really dark, right? Like that. Okay, I'll grab that color. And then what I'm going to do too, so I'll paste that in over here first, is maybe I'm going to add, and I always, well, not always, but I tend to very often do this over here in Google Chrome as I'm trying out stuff to see what it will look like, right? So there. Now I have a code chunk where we have a black background with white text for the code. Okay, so all I have to do then is over here on my pre, I say color FFF. Okay, And when I refresh, it is that way now. Does that make sense? Questions on that? Okay, if you're looking closely, you might notice, though, that we have an issue here now, which is our code that's here also turned white, which is unfortunate. So we'll fix that in a minute, okay? But before we get there, I want to point out, we're now getting to a point where we have a fair amount of CSS here, right? It's not like a ton, but it's a decent amount. If you're getting to this point where you have multiple things that are styled like this, I would encourage you to think about writing a style sheet rather than just having a code chunk, okay? And there's a couple of reasons for this. The most important from my perspective is that you can then style it in a text editor that has syntax highlighting and autocomplete and things for you for CSS code, which can just help you not write so many errors or not have so many errors, okay? The other thing is it helps sort of keep you organized because it keeps your styling separate from your analysis script or whatever it is that you're doing, okay? And you know, it's not the most important thing, but you notice anytime I have something like this, I'm hitting enter and it's bringing me over a little bit because it thinks this is an argument to color because it sees this as a comment. And that's annoying, right? That's not what I want. So what we're going to do if we want to do this is we would copy the code that we have here and put it in a text document, and we would just save it with the .css extension. Okay. Then up here at the top, we would change output HTML document to HTML document CSS mystyle.css. Okay. Now, before we actually do that, yes, the spacing here really, really matters. So if you have messed up spacing on those parts, it will not work. Okay. The other thing is here I'm saying my style sheet is called mystyle.css. It's important that that style sheet be in the same directory as your R Markdown file. Okay, they have to be in the exact same directory for it to find it. You could also, you know, put a path here, but it's going to start at wherever that R Markdown document is. So if it's nested inside something else, you could do that. Okay. But before we actually do this, I want to mention some tools for doing this. All right. So I tend to use Sublime Text. I have recently started using VS Code for other coding stuff, and I think it's super nice also. VS Code tends to be sort of it seems to be the most popular these days and is increasing in popularity too. But these are both just text editors, but they're really powerful text editors, and they give you all sorts of different options. One of the things that's nice about VS Code is you get a little preview of the color right there. Okay, so for both of these, there's hundreds of styles that you can use to show what your CSS code looks like here. But the important thing is, at least in my opinion, is that you actually use one that can style like this so that you're getting this as a helper. Okay, so I would download one of those, or maybe both of them, and then you're just going to launch them. So I'm going to switch my share here for a second. I'm going to go with VS Code for today. And it looks like this is how it looks when I open it, right? And then I would just say, I'm going to start a new file, okay? And it's just going to be a blank file. And then I'm going to, I know you won't be able to see this, but that's okay. I'm just going to go and copy all of the CSS code that I had in my other document, in my R Markdown file, and I'm going to paste it in here. At first, it's not going to actually display anything there, right? And that's because it doesn't know what type of file this is. You can see down here it says it's a plain text file. So I'm going to save this then, and I'm going to save it in the same directory as my R Markdown file, and I'll call it style style.css. As soon as it's saved as CSS, it knows what this is, okay? And notice it has a color picker right built within it too, so that's quite nice also. Okay, so it'll actually change that code for you. Okay, pretty slick, I think. Okay, so that's good. So I'm gonna save. I've saved this already, but I'll save it again. Close this little thing, and then we'll go back to our Studio and Google Chrome. Okay, and now I have all of this stuff saved in that same document, so I can safely just delete all of that. Okay, none of it needs to be there. Then up here, I have HTML document. I'm just going to hit return. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to put a colon there. Then I'll hit return, and notice that it does the spacing for me correctly there. I hit return one more time, and then I say, is it CSS? Let me go back here. Yeah, CSS style.css. And again, as long as that is in the same spot, that style.css file is in the same directory as class RMD example.rmd, then we're good. Okay, so I'll knit this now, and this is what it did look like. I refresh it, and notice I changed some of the colors when I was messing with it in VS Code. Does that make sense? The other thing I can do is, hang on. Let me just do it this way. You can open it with our Studio, but I'm not sure. Yeah, so it has like a little bit of styling. So it's, you know, decent. But if you want to do it that way too, you can. But you'll see how I have like these alerts and stuff. Sometimes they're not correct. But what you can do is just here for a new file, click new, and then just say text file. And then you could paste that code in there. And then when you save it, just save it as whatever.css. Okay, so that's an alternative if you don't want to use one of these other text editors. I think they're worth it though, because they have a lot of extra features that will help make this easier. Questions on any of that? Okay, did anybody actually try to do that? And did it work? Good. Okay, moving on. So I mentioned, right, over here that our code here is all white. And so our code, the output from our code. And so I want the color up here to be white, but I don't want it to be white down here. Okay, and this is a little bit tricky because I was only modifying that pre thing, which I thought was just this up here, but then it ended up modifying this below too. Okay, which sort of doesn't make sense. Like the background color only affected this, but the color affected both of them. So that's weird, right? But that's okay. We'll just try to fix it. So we're going to use our web inspector element again. And now I'm going to come down here, okay? And I'll click on that. And then here, I don't really see much that's helping me, except I do see right here, this says pre-not class, okay? And so that says background white. So I can say, all right, well, maybe this is it. And I'll just say color, and then I can just pick a color here too. Like, well, probably don't want that one. That's probably a white-ish one. Let's go blue violet, right? Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Okay, so there we go. I figured it out, right? I'm going to, normally I would do this in VS Code or Sublime Text, but because I'm keeping my window open or all on the same thing, I'll just do it here in RStudio. But so what I would do is, again, I'm just going to basically copy this over here, pre-not class, and then paste it over here. Okay, so that's I can get rid of the background color because that's the default, or yeah, that's the default. And then shoot, I copied the wrong one. Hang on. Oh wait, what did I do here? Is the other pre stuff there still? Yeah, okay, here's the pre stuff. So I'm gonna actually probably put this up. I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna put this up with this one. Oh, I pasted all of it in again. I see what happened. Okay, hang on. Okay, so pre here, and then I need to get my pre not over here. Okay, and generally these two things basically go together. So I'm going to try to actually keep them together here too. Okay, so do that, and then I'm going to say color, and maybe I'll make it the same as the body color, right? Because the font is going to be different, but maybe I want the color to be the same. Or maybe actually, well, yeah, sure, I'll just do that. Okay, now I can render this again. And when I refresh over here, you'll see, notice that's good now. Okay, so this is like a super regular process for me when I'm styling something. It's I make an edit like I did to this one, and then it messes something else up. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then I use the inspector to find that one and then edit that one. It probably looks like easy, right? Like, or easy for me anyway. But it's not always that easy, okay? And very regularly for me, it's like taking a lot of hunting around to try to figure things out. But I already went through it all once, so that's partly why I was able to do it. And these ones were just not that hard. But so if you end up in this process where you're like, can't find the thing to modify it, just know that's super common, and it'd probably take me a while most of the time too. But this is also why it's like, this is all extra stuff. Like this is the last lecture of the class, right? And so I kind of purposely put this near the end because I think this is a really important thing in terms of, well, I think it's important in terms of taking something that you're producing from looking like nice to making it look totally personalized and totally yours, right? Because a lot of the R Markdown stuff that's out there is great and looks super nice, but it's also, if you're using all the default templates and everything, yours looks just like everybody else's looks. And that's fine when you're getting started, but it's fun often, I think anyway, to really modify it this way and make it your own. And notice all I've really done here, as I said from the beginning, is changed the fonts, the colors, and the background colors. Like basically fonts and colors, that's it. And it's made a huge difference in the way that this looks, right? Okay, so that's how we did that part. All right, in R Markdown, and really any R Markdown file that runs through Pandoc, which as I mentioned is pretty much all of them, they have this new, it's Pandoc 3, I think. They have this new way of creating your own divs inside an R Markdown document or inside a Markdown document. Okay, and the way that it works is you just use these fences. Okay, so I have including plots, whatever, and then let's say right here I just go attention. Okay, and then there. This is now going to be translated to this. Okay, but there's some text there, right, would be inside of there. So I'd say warning, time intensive, okay, or something like that. So I'll save that. Now I'm going to knit it. And when we do this initially, when we scroll down here, it just looks like that, right? So it doesn't look any different from the rest of the text. So it's like, okay, well, that was pointless. Why did we do that? But it's not pointless because this is now a new div, just this text, right? And it has this associated class with it called attention, all right? And so what we can do is we can actually style that div in our CSS style sheet to be however we want it to be, okay? So we can do it like this, okay? I'll mention this more in just a second, but all we've done to this point is modified HTML tags, right? Or styled HTML tags. This is the first instance we've seen where we're referring to that thing by something different. And the reason is because this is this div tag, and we don't want to modify every single div that exists because that's a ton, right? We just want to modify the divs that have this attention class. Okay, so there's two ways we can do this. One is we can say, we can say div.attention, okay? And then we can modify that. Or because this is the only attention class that we have, we can just say dot attention. Okay, so we can just kind of omit the div part and just say anything that has the attention class is going to have this style. Okay, so maybe we want to make that text bigger. Okay, again, this is code that I wouldn't expect any of you really to know off the top of your head, but you can very quickly say, okay, CSS increase font size. Notice it's in my search history, right? And like this is super common, right? I do this kind of stuff all the time. Font size 15 pixels, font size large, font size 100%. All right, I tend to use these rem values, which means 2 times its relative size. So the default, I think, is 14 pixels or something like that. And so make it 28 pixels. So we'd say font dash size 2 rem. Okay, and that's it. Save it. Knit. And then we'll come back over here, refresh, and notice it's a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's cool. But maybe we want to do a lot more than that. Maybe we want to actually make it like a real callout box. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to do here is first I'm going to add a border around the whole thing. Okay, so the way I use borders a fair amount because they're a good way to sort of distinguish things, right? So this is saying this is going to be a border that is 3 pixels in width. It's going to be a solid border because you could have dashed or dotted or whatever. And it's going to be this color. Okay, so I'll say border 3 pixels. And maybe I want to make it actually that H2 background color. Okay, so I'll do that color. All right, let's just try that. Render it, see what it looks like. Oh, it didn't work. Doesn't appear. Did I not save this or something? Dot attention. Doesn't seem like it worked. Well, it didn't. What did I do differently there? Border. Somebody see what it is?
Yeah, Sarah said solid.
That's it. Yep. Thank you. Okay, solid. And now refresh. There it is. Okay, so that's kind of cool. We have a border around this thing now, but maybe we want to go further. Okay, border radius is going to make the corners, instead of being pointy, it's going to make them curved. Okay, and so you can change how many pixels you want that to be. So if I say border radius 5 pixels, then that's going to create something that looks like that, right? Versus maybe I want to do it 35 pixels, and then that's going to change it so it looks like that. Okay? So that's cool. And then maybe we want to keep going and change the background color. So this is, again, a really common way for me to use colors. I want to have a background color that is similar to that border color, but is not the same color. I want it to be lighter, probably. Okay, so I'm going to go to this HSL, paste that color in there, and then I'm just going to make this a lot lighter. I'm taking the exact same color, but I'm just making it much lighter. So I'm going to go all the way up to like 95%. Okay, then I'll copy that, and I'll say background color. So it appears RStudio has actually improved their CSS renderer quite a bit since I last used it. So I guess that might actually be a great way to go forward. Okay, so I did that, and now let's see what that looks like. Okay, starting to get somewhere, right? It's looking pretty good. Now, let's say maybe we'll want to make the font size even bigger. We could change the text. I'm going to make the font size a little bit bigger. I'll go 4. I'm not going to change the text because I made that background color light enough that it still shows up. But I am going to say text align center. Okay. So we'll refresh that. Well, reknit it rather. And then now we have something that looks like this. Okay. So that's a pretty neat little thing, because now we just added that style. And then if we're writing a document where we have things like this that we want to be like, whoa, hang on a second, you know, you can create things like that. Or maybe you want to create like little information boxes, like, oh, here's some extra information that you may or may not want to know, or whatever, right? And you can see how you can style that, and how you can build up that code pretty quickly, right? Any questions on that part? And again, like, this is for that attention class. Maybe I want to create something else that's like, maybe this should be warning class, or maybe the warning class is red instead of purple, whatever, right? Okay. So the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about with respect to our Markdown documents and just CSS in general. We've now seen 2 ways to reference HTML things, right? Through the HTML tag directly, which would be like body or h1 or whatever. Through the HTML class, which is the dot in front of it. And the last one is through the ID. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to come up here, and I'm just going to say on my HTML document, TOC true. Okay, so that's going to add a table of contents for me. So when I come over here, I'll refresh this, and you can see now I have this table of contents. All right, but maybe I want to style this table of contents. Maybe I don't like this default style. All right. Well, if I wanted to do that, I would, of course, start out by going to my developer tools, get my handy dandy selector, come down here, and it's saying LI. Okay, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm going to click on that and come over here, and now I can hover over things. This is a list, but notice if up here, there's this entire div that contains the table of contents. That div has this ID, which is equal to TOC. Okay, so that ID is different from a class. It's just identifying this specific div. Okay, and notice we have a header ID also. So maybe you could very easily modify the header using the same sort of approach, but I'm going to modify the table of contents. Okay.
Daniel, just a point of clarification, the table of contents is pulled from your level headers?
Yes, correct. Yes. So automatically, I have our Markdown over here, which is a level 1 header, so that's shown up there. And then we have including plots, which is the level 2 header, so it's shown down below. Maybe I want to add one more level 1 header. Here's some stuff. And then maybe down here, I'll do one more level 2 header, more stuff. And then I'll even do a level 3 header, even more stuff, right? And then when I reknit this and I refresh it here, you'll see now it's all updated according to those headers. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, again, I'm using this to sort of identify it. But if I modify this li, that's going to end up actually modifying every list element I have in my entire document, which is not what I want, right? I want to modify this div, the table of contents div. So again, I can't modify just div, but I can modify it by its ID, which is TOC. Okay, so what I'm going to do is instead of using the dot, I would use the hashtag TOC. And then from there, I can just start to modify it how I want to, right? So maybe I'll go background, color, and we'll do this same header 2 background color again. And then, oops, and then I'll say the color is going to be, okay. And then I can knit this, and we could again, we could change the font or whatever. And notice it didn't change the color like I expected it to. It changed these, right, but not the actual color itself. And the reason is because these are actually all links. And so what I need to do is change the link style. All right. So let's go back here. This is some code I used to change the table of contents for whatever, right? So let's change the links globally. Okay, I'm going to change the links for everything in the document. Okay, and maybe for now, instead of doing this, maybe I'll just say border for this. Border is equal to 2 pixels. I'll make it dashed and that color. All right, let's do this because I think, well, we can maybe come back to it later. But so let's look here. All right, it looks like that now. Okay, so now I'm going to change the link color. So all I do is use A, right? Come over here, do A, and I don't know what color this is, but we can do that color, this one, and then you can see I changed the font weight to bold here too. By default, it has this underline when you hover. I don't like that very much, but a lot of links will have the underline as the link thing too, to sort of distinguish it as a link. So there's a bunch of different things you can do to highlight links. I'll just keep the color as that for now. Let's just see what that does. Okay, come over here, refresh, and it's this green color, which doesn't go very well with the rest of my theme, but that's okay. We're just trying to modify stuff for now, right? So that's cool. We changed the link color, but now what we probably want to do is actually have a different hover also. Okay, so for the hover, I probably don't want it to be bluish color underlined, right? So I'm going to say A, and then all you do is a colon, hover. Okay, and then for the hover color, maybe I want to take this same color, but make it lighter or something. Make it a little brighter, right? So I'll do that for the hover color, right? And then I'm going to add this. This is just one I know because I use it a lot. Text decoration, not decoration color, just text decoration. And I'm going to say none. And that's going to remove the underline when I hover on it, okay? So I'm going to knit, come back over here, refresh, and now we have links, and notice they changed to a basically unreadable color when you hover. All right. So that's kind of neat. And you could do things like even change the background color too. Right. So maybe I want to take, oops. Maybe I want to take this same color, but make it like really dark. Oops. Okay, so go here, try that. It's probably not going to look very good, but we'll try. Why not? Oops. Oops. Okay, refresh. And it didn't work. Why didn't that work? Background color. There's something wrong there, but I don't see it. Does anybody else see it?
Semicolon after the none, I think.
Ah, that's it. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Now we'll reknit that. Refresh, and there we go. That's kind of interesting. Not that bad. Not as bad as I expected it to be. Okay. What you can do too is notice it's like really squished on the text though. You can actually add some padding to it. So anyway, there's a bunch of different things. This is obviously a real quick intro. Okay, so that's cool. In our table of contents, though, maybe we want the link color to be different. And maybe this is because, like I had before, maybe I want the background color to be, you know, a dark color, like I had it before. So what we can do in this case is have our code like this. So we reference the table of contents, and then we say A. So we're saying A for links, right? Links inside the table of contents should have this style instead of links, the style for the links globally. Okay, so let's try this. I'm going to move these up because this is sort of more global stuff. I'd actually probably move these up near the beginning, probably after the headers. All right. A lot of people put their CSS in alphabetical order, which I think is a good thing too. I tend to try to put them in order of like preference, but whatever. Okay, so I'm gonna now, so I have my style for the table of contents. I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna say background color to change this again. I'll just make the background color that, sure, why not? Okay. Let's just knit this real quick so I can make sure that I'm on the same page here. Yeah. Okay, so now this is getting there, right? But all I want to do here probably is change the color of these links. Okay, so what I do is I'll say, all right, for the table of content links, table of contents links, I want those to be this color, whatever. Just make them white. Okay, but I can keep the hover the same because why not? Okay, now I refresh and there we go. So those are now all links, and you can tell they're links because when I hover over them, it goes. Okay, it's interesting. I don't know why. Oh yeah, I do. So this table of contents color is taking preference over the A hover color. Okay, so that's why we're not getting the color on the highlight. If we wanted that though, we could still get it. We'd just go like this, right? DOC A hover, and then color, whatever it was, this one. There we go. Okay. So that's, I think, oh yeah, one other thing. Occasionally you'll run into things where it's just like you can see it through the inspector. You know this is the thing that you want to modify, but when you're adding the code, it's just not making the change, and it can be infuriating, right? Sometimes that's because, well, so CSS stands for cascading style sheets, right? So they have this order of preference, and that order is based on that cascade. I only sort of marginally understand how that works, but if you have like code here and code here, then the code above is going to take preference over the code below, or maybe it's the opposite of that. I can't remember. But the important tag will override that preference. Okay, so this is generally something you should avoid, because then you're messing up all the standard rules. But sometimes it's, at least in my experience, it's basically unavoidable. Okay, so you have the thing that you're trying to modify, and then you change the background color or whatever, and then you just have to use this important tag, and it will put that as the priority over the standard cascading style sheet priority. Does that make sense? So when we're looking over here, like let's say we look at this. Oh shoot, I just closed it. That's not what I meant to do. I just was on autopilot. Let's say we look at this, right? So that for the table of contents, we have this table of contents here, right? That's what we wrote. But then there's all this other stuff that's coming from the default class. Let me try this one instead. This might be more clear. So yes, so you can see this stuff on the pre it's slashed out. That means that our like, this is a perfect example, right? We specified background color and the color here, and so the background color and the color down here on the default CSS are being overridden, right? And so if down here I change this and I add that important tag, notice it goes back to that color. Okay, so this color would override it based on the standard cascading style sheets order of things. But if you add this important tag, it will override that, and it'll just say, this is the one we're using, basically. Okay, so again, this is something that you should try to avoid, but sometimes it's unavoidable. All right, we only have 3 more minutes, so I'm not going to get into this. But if you want to, you can go ahead and just look through this, and you'll see how I ended up, I went through all of this styling. Okay, this is just ggplot code, but this is now me styling a ggplot to match my theme. So I'll show you real quick what this ends up looking like, because I kept it. I didn't trash it right away. This is, oh shoot, nope, I'm not sharing that screen. Hang on. Okay. All right, can you see that? Good. Yeah. Nobody's responding, but I'm assuming you can see that. This is what it ends up looking like through that theme. So, you know, I changed the font. I changed I made these a little bit larger, changed the font of those two, changed the background color, changed the body background, etc. And again, this is like, I think, a pretty nice example, because it's this theme for this dashboard exists in exactly one location, and it's on my desktop, right? It doesn't exist anywhere else. And to me, that's kind of fun and exciting. Is this the best theme? I don't know, probably not. It's not that great, but it's mine, and it was kind of fun for me to create that instead of you know, just using their default themes. So CSS, sort of like last note on this, CSS is a bit of a learning curve. Obviously, it's an entirely new thing. But if you just Google things a lot, you'll be able to find the code that you want. And then hopefully this introduction has sort of given you a way to get started on it. It can absolutely be a time suck to end all time sucks. Like, you just can end up tweaking things over and over and over and over and over again until, you know, you don't even like what you created anymore or whatever, and you just want to start back over. So like, be a little bit careful of that. But I would encourage you to actually try this out a little bit. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And then it won't be such a time suck. And I think it's fun. And it can, I think, take your dashboards and things and move them from being really nice looking to being totally yours, right? Okay, so Monday we're gonna have presentations. I will, I might even just assign the order on the day of, because it's easy to do. I will give you time limits. I think I need to calculate it again, but I think it's roughly 5 minutes per person. So super informal, just show what you've done so far. If you haven't gotten to the point where you have it in a dashboard or a blog post or whatever, that's fine. Just show us your visuals, show us where you started and where they're going. If you want to show all three, that's great. If you want to just show one where you started with it and how you progressed, that's great too. Okay. Any questions on anything that we got going forward? Peer reviews are due today also. I've seen most of them come in, but please try to get to that if you haven't. Okay, thank you all. I'll see you next week.